Hi, everybody. On this elder law interview, I'm joined by Fran Cañas. She is a planner at Medivest. And what they do is they assist attorneys and trustees with Medicare Set Asides. So when there's a personal injury or a workers' comp case, Medicare needs to be a secondary payer. And what that means is very vague and not really clear. So what companies like Medivest do is they come in and they help make sure that the calculations are made appropriately and that those accounts are managed appropriately so that the client can maintain their Medicare benefits. So please join me. I learned a lot on this particular webinar about an area of law that I didn't know anything about that can help both special needs planners who are helping personal injury attorneys and workers' comp attorneys put these plans together, as well as trustees in those areas to be able to manage those monies appropriately so the client's Medicare benefits are protected. So join me and Francisca as she teaches me a whole lot about Medicare set asides. Thank you so much, Fran, for being here with me for this elder law interview. Can you introduce yourself and a little bit about Medivest?
Sure. Thank you, Jim, for having me. So I am Fran Cañas. I've been with Medivest for 4 years now. I'm a CMSB licensed person at Medivest, and Medivest has been around for almost 30 years next year. So
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
yeah,
So what kind of cases does Medivest help with?
sure. Yeah. So we're an MSB compliance company, and MSB stands for Medicare as a secondary payer. So we offer services of writing MSA reports, medical cost projections, and also we do professional administration of those Medicare Set Aside reports, and also MCA accounts, so medical cost projection accounts, so just general medical accounts. And we also help with lien resolution, so a little bit here and there.
And so when you're talking about these Medicare set aside accounts and portions of settlements, can you talk a little bit about what those are and describe when those come into play?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the Medicare Set Aside, or MSA term, is generally misunderstood by many. MSA, the Medicare Set Aside report, is basically just a snapshot in time, an allocation of report, a snapshot in time of where the client is today in terms of their medical recovery. And so it's kind of quasi like a life care plan, but only for Medicare covered and injury related items.
Okay,
And
so we're talking like workers' comp, personal injury type cases. When you're going through that settlement process, what is Medicare going to cover versus what are the private settlement dollars going to be used for?
yeah, so it's difficult because what's out there, there's a statute from 1980, which says the MSB statute, which says Medicare should always be a secondary payer when there's a primary payer involved or responsible for funds. And so that's all that is out there. And so then they say, okay, you need to comply with the statute. This applies to all insurances. So liability, workers' comp, health insurance, all of them, no fault. And then the issue is like, okay, but how do we do that? Because really there's only guidelines on workers' compensation cases. And so this is why the MSA industry standard vehicle to comply with the statute. However, doing an MSA is not mandatory. So that's where the issue becomes.
And then what kind of expenses can be paid with this money?
Yeah. So this MSA account is only for Medicare covered and injury related items. So in this MSA, mind you, let me backtrack a little bit.
Yeah.
This statute says you should take into consideration Medicare's interest for past medicals. So that would be for liens. So from date of settlement, everything that happened in the case. And so then for futures as well. So that would be from date of settlement going forward. And this is where the MSA comes in. And so this is where we would have kind of like a 3-step process where you first get the MSA done. So you go out, you can use us or whoever it's out there, write an MSA and basically figure out how much money you should set aside to make sure you're not shifting the burden to Medicare and they need to be secondary because the client's basically receiving funds for a settlement and they say, okay, we get that you got money and that's for several things. You got your pain and suffering and all these things, but what about us? The Medicare Trust Fund should be there for everybody, and some of those funds should go to this Medicare Set Aside. And so the goal is determine how much money should go in there, spend that money first, and then Medicare will come in and pick up the bill and become primary again.
Gotcha. So Does Medicare have to come in and approve these plans as the settlements being put together?
That's a great question, Jim. There is a submission process for workers' compensation cases only, not for the other plans. However, you should do something about it, and that's where we've done MSAs where we've submitted them to CMS, and they basically never responded. Goes into a black hole. We never hear back, or they come back and they've said we're currently not reviewing this. We really don't have a way to do it. But yes, so only for workers' compensation cases.
Oh, okay. And then, so I think you mentioned this a little bit in your last answer, but could you kind of reiterate and explain a little bit how and when does Medicare start paying medical expenses?
Yes. So what we recommend is doing the set aside just so you have an idea how much money you need to spend first to make sure you protect your client's Medicare benefits. And so have an outside party, like someone like Medivest or someone else, do that due diligence for you. We get the most recent 2 years of medical records for your client and then figure out how much that is. Once you spend that money, and in that sense, that's really for liability cases, you apportion the MSA, meaning you reduce it by facts and factors of the case to make it a fair amount. And so the idea is to spend that money first and then Medicare will step in. So it's different depending on how much treatment they need, how much money they got, all these other factors.
And how are those those expenditures out of those account reported to Medicare, so Medicare knows, hey, we did what we were supposed to do. Now it's time for you to help pick up the bills.
Yeah. Really, there's no silver bullet again. It's more of an art rather than a science. I know it's not the perfect answer, but there is a guideline. There are guidelines for how to spend the funds, not on how to prepare all that part before. And so Medicare has rules and regulations on how to spend the money in the MSA account. And so you're supposed to spend it on anything that would be Medicare covered and that would be stemming from that injury. And this is all for accident cases. So clients that have been in a catastrophic accident. And so anything, let's say client had a TBI, anything related to the TBI, that would have been Medicare covered. So I know sometimes it's difficult to really know what would be Medicare covered versus what's not Medicare covered or Medicaid. And so that's also something that we help with where we offer professional administration. We can help you spend that money. Yeah.
It's got to be really helpful for a lot of people. When you have a client that's working with Medivest, do you guys do like direct bill payment? How do you guys handle those accounts?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So basically what we do is we send something that looks like an insurance card to the client. And so every time they need to go to the doctor, and then beforehand, we would have a call with them and figure out where their doctors are. But basically, they would have like a glorified insurance card just for this MSA account. And so every time they go to the doctor, we coordinate everything on the back end and we do all the payments. So, and we tend to hold those funds, or if there's a trustee, then we coordinate with them. So yeah, there's several ways to do it.
So you just mentioned trustees, and we met at a trustee conference, a special needs trust conference. So I'm assuming you do work with trustees as well. So how would an attorney kind of coordinate between you and a trustee that they're designating in a special needs trust, for example, when someone's injured and receiving those benefits? How is that kind of handled with Medivest working directly with a trustee?
Yeah, in a perfect world, which is not always, we would be engaged before settlements. And so at that point, everybody's kind of in the loop and we would just talk to the trustee and see, we would become a sub trust of their special needs trust. And so we would be housed within the special needs trust. Some trustees are able to work with us directly where we are handling the funds. And so we do all the payments. And so that doesn't hit the client's account. So since it's funded through the special needs trust, then it never touches the client. And so they would send that over to us. He like to do it themselves, but it's a lot of work. I don't know if you ever had to negotiate with a medical provider on anything. It's just so we do it too.
And I'm sure there's a loaded question and you can give a very general answer if you want to, neither of us are tax attorneys, so don't take this to tax, but what is kind of the tax liability on these funds when they're coming through a settlement? Do you guys handle any of the tax kind of intricacies of that?
Yeah. So tax liability, that's a great question. So the MSA on itself at time of settlement has no tax implications. You could do a structure to fund the MSA as well, or you could do it as a lump sum. However, there's really no tax implications at time of settlement. However, on an annual basis, this account has to be in a interest bearing account. The money has to be in an interest bearing account. So there will be some interest there. And so then you need to do some sort of
Okay.
1099 or something like that.
So
Yeah.
on the interest from the interest bearing account.
Correct. Yes.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Let's say someone's injured. They pass away before all the projections. What happens with the money that's in the Medicare set aside?
Yeah. We will not run away with we have a form for designation of a beneficiary. So wherever they designate, that would go to them. If they didn't do that, then it would go to their estate, or we would talk to the trustee and figure that out too. Yeah.
And so when you have an attorney who's helping, and generally with elder law and special needs planning, it's going to be the person preparing the trust and things like that. When should the attorney who's helping, generally the personal injury attorney, put all this together? When should they reach out to you and engage you guys? When would you guys like to be brought in that process?
Yeah, I tend to recommend, hopefully, when you're in negotiations, when you're about to reach a settlement, just because you don't want that number, the MSA number, to be a surprise. And then now we're scrambling calculations trying to fit that in. So yeah, definitely before the case settles. So we get that going. We've done it at any point, things happen.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah.
So it sounds like it would be really important to have you guys involved with the settlement so we can make sure that all the math is mapping correctly. And there's, like you said, the client's already starting to buy a mansion somewhere, and it's like, let's hold up. We need to use some of these funds to pay for some medical bills.
Right, exactly. And what people don't understand is this is going to be for medicals. Like, this is not like we're keeping the money or they're paying for something and will go away. This is money that they'll spend on their medical needs. So, and to protect their Medicare benefits, which that's the ultimate goal. So,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. So if we have attorneys that are in this position, how do they reach out to you and work with you guys?
Yeah. So I'm the director of sales for Medivest for Florida and Texas. We're nationwide. And so you can just email me, call me, and Medivest will help. We have great people. Our average employee tenure is like 8 years. So
Oh, wow.
if you have a question, just give us a call.
Sweet. I will put your contact information with this interview. So if there's an attorney out there that's looking for this help, and I'm sure there's a lot, I'll have that contact information on the link to this page. So thank you so much for informing us about these Medicare set-asides. I know they can get really complicated, and you explain them perfectly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jim. I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.